Assalamu alaikum. Lecture number 31 of Advanced Cost and Management Accounting. Today we are going to discuss the topic of strategic management accounting. In order to discuss strategic management accounting, we should have a very clear understanding of what we mean by strategic management and, of course, what we mean by strategy. So we are going to focus, first of all, on this term strategy. What is the meaning of strategy? How does it apply? And how does it relate to business also? Most people will be aware that strategy of any event or of any activity relates to the accomplishment of a desired objective. Sometimes, and more often than not, an opponent can also be involved. So a strategy would be the manner in which the objective is accomplished by winning against an opponent. In order to understand what is actually strategy, I want to relate to one or two examples and talk about one or two events that will show what strategy is and how it is put into effect. And I want to give the example of the World Cup match played between Pakistan and Australia. This was a big and important match, and of course it was won by Pakistan. And we have to see whether there's anything that the Pakistan team did which was different to what they had done before or in other matches. Was there any strategy against the Australian team? And we saw that the new ball was being used by a spinner, Abdurrahman. So that was a strategy that where normally a new ball would be used by a fast bowler, the Pakistan team, under the conditions of the pitch they were playing on, they decided to use a spinner with the new ball. This is strategy. And that strategy, in actual fact, became successful because they were successful in limiting the scoring ability of the opponent, and they were also successful in taking some wickets on a timely basis. So that strategy of changing from a fast bowler to start the innings with the new ball to a spinner, this is strategy, and that strategy was a successful strategy. In sports, this can be seen in some other cases also, and one or two cases that come to mind which highlight what strategy is and how it has been used to good effect can be narrated. Going back some time now and looking at boxing matches, the famous all-time boxer Muhammad Ali, in his earlier fight, when he first became world champion, he was fighting Sonny Liston. In that fight, his strategy was to be light on his feet, very quick, very fast. And in those days, it was said that he flies like a butterfly and stings like a bee. So speed and movement, and that was his strategy. He was young, a lot of speed, a lot of energy, and he was most of the time bouncing on his feet and moving about quite a lot, and therefore not allowing the opponent, Sonny Liston, to really score some points against him by reaching him. So Muhammad Ali managed to win that world championship title fight, and he became the world championship boxer of the world. That was the strategy that he used. And that strategy was at that time successful. Later on, as events changed, and history tells us, and we all know, that he then refused to become part of the Vietnam War, and he was then even had to serve a prison sentence for a while. His title was taken away from him. Subsequently, when he came out and came back into boxing, he started to box once again and to reach the title of the World Championship. When he got to the final stage, his opponent was George Foreman. Now he was once again in the ring fighting for the title of World Championship Boxing. George Foreman had a different kind of a reputation. His reputation was that most of his opponents had been knocked out. He was a strong, powerful young man, and he had strong punches, and he could knock out his opponents, and most of his fights did not last till the end. The opponents were usually knocked out in the first few rounds. So when this fight started, Muhammad Ali adopted a tactic, a strategy. He very quickly found that the speed was not working against this young George Foreman. So he pulled himself back and he stayed in front of, just at the ropes. And George Foreman came out to pack punches into him left and right, and he was just defending himself. All he was doing was standing against the rope and trying to just defend against the punches being thrown by George Foreman. And this went on round after round. The round would start, he would come in, he would go to the ropes. Just stay there and just defend his body from the punches. And George Foreman kept on pounding and pounding and pounding. This was a strategy. It was totally a new strategy. And gradually, George Foreman got tired and lost energy and could not find the same impact in the punches and started to slow down. And normally, this is a 15-round fight. And after a few rounds, his strategy started to show some sign of success. He found that waiting on the ropes, just defending himself, completely tired out this young and energetic George Foreman. In the 8th round, I think it was, he realized that the punches now no longer have the strength and no longer have the power to hurt him. So in the 8th round, he pulled back a little bit, gave a few punches, and George Foreman was knocked out in the 8th round. So this was strategy. He called it the rope-a-dopes strategy. Staying back at the ropes, just defending, letting George Foreman tire himself out, and once he was tired, he was able to come out and quickly knock him out and win the fight and become, for the second time, the world champion in boxing, heavyweight boxing. So this is strategy, two different strategies. The first one, young and energetic, fast in movement. The second one, different strategy, slowed down, letting the opponent tire himself out, and then defeating him. This shows that there is such a thing as strategy and what impact the strategy can have. And all credit, of course, to him. And the strategy that he adopted, he was able to then knock out his opponent. So this is how we are going to think of what strategy is. Strategy is something that you plan for an event or an activity or an encounter, and you take some actions. Usually they are different actions, and they are designed to achieve a desired objective. Very often, strategy is something that is used in war terminology. War strategy, for example. And we can look at a very clear example from the early history of the Islamic period. And the Prophet ﷺ, he fought a war which was known as Jang-e-Khandak, the War of the Trench. That was his strategy. At that time, the tribes of the Kuffar and the Jews all got together, and they built a huge army against the Muslims of Medina. And that army came to attack the Muslims in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ, he then consulted with the Sahaba, and they made a strategy. And their strategy was to dig a trench outside of Medina, to dig a long, wide trench outside of Medina to stop the attackers, to stop the attack. As we know from history, that, of course, this was a successful strategy. The Kuffar were stopped. They were not able to cross the trench, and they ultimately returned unsuccessful and defeated. So this is strategy once again. So when we set out to do something and we think about how we are going to do it, we think of our objectives and we try to find alternatives and ways of achieving the objectives. This is strategy. Now, the same thing can apply to businesses. Strategy in business. When the organization sets out, they want to find ways and means and think of different courses and actions to take to make their business successful, to make their products successful and popular among the customers and consumers. One example of a successful strategy in business was the introduction of frozen food. This is a strategy. Frozen food is being introduced into the market. They have a longer shelf life. They can be also stored, taken away and stored at home, and then they can be used at a convenient time for cooking. This is now a convenience in cooking. So therefore, this strategy of trying to introduce products into the market which are going to be convenient to customers and consumers, they can, first of all, the shopkeepers have a longer life for them to store as frozen food, and then the product can be taken away and also be stored at homes in their refrigerators and freezers. So this has given a different, you can say, a dimension to providing food and selling food. Add to that an aspect of even selling cooked food. So the food is nearly ready, and it is frozen, and it is sent to the market. So the consumers can buy from the market, take it home, and very quickly, in a very short time, have it ready to eat. This has become successful. A lot of people find it convenient. It saves time, and therefore, in many ways, this is a strategy which has worked for many companies and has allowed them to make their products more popular and reach greater markets, making the life longer of food items by freezing them. And of course, there are other different examples of being able to store food for a longer period of time by their packaging and so forth. So those are all strategies that are developed by business in order to enhance their business activity. So strategy is adopted by businesses, and therefore the management, strategic management therefore becomes the management taking those steps and those measures and establishing that kind of activity which is designed to obtain the desired objects. So in strategic management accounting, therefore, we should be looking at accounting that supports this strategic management, provides the information. So accounting is there to provide the information for the decision making by management to set out strategies and to conduct activities according to a particular plan or strategy and to achieve what they set out. Usually, when we refer to strategy, we are referring to an event more or less from start to finish. So strategy is related to some kind of a long-term plan, you can say. It is not a short-term thing. It is designed from start to finish to accomplish an overall objective. So when we think of strategy, we should think that we are looking at significant and long-term related plans and long-term related actions. Strategy to accomplish a task, win against an opponent. Information for formulation and implementation of organization strategy. To develop an integrated framework of performance measurement that can be used to clarify, communicate, and manage strategy. This, therefore, is the role of strategic management accounting, to develop a framework to provide management with the information in which they can then set out the activities, measure the performance, and also communicate at the same time the strategy to the different levels of staff and management. Once the different levels will understand the strategy and it is communicated to them in that way, then it becomes much easier to implement that strategy. So to have a strategy is one thing, then it has to be understood by the team, and then it has to be implemented by them. So the entire framework of providing a system that allows this can be referred to as strategic management accounting. Measure the performance, communicate the strategy, and then implement what has been set up and planned. Strategic decisions usually involve the longer term and have a significant effect on the organization. As we have said, therefore, when we think of strategic decisions, we are thinking of significant decisions. Significant decisions that will affect the organization in a major way and usually have a long-term effect and a long-term connotation, a long-term reference, thinking of the long term. It's not what to do now and here and for today. It is something that has been designed to achieve an overall objective. So strategy usually implies significant steps, significant actions, longer term period. External information about competitors to protect organizations' strategic position and determine future strategies. Strategic management will very often require information on competition. What is the position of this organization within the market among the other competitors, other similar organizations? So strategic management accounting will therefore be aiming at providing external information also. So they will be looking out and they will be trying to see what is the information and what is the position of other competitive organizations compared to this organization. And in order to take decisions to protect the organization within the competitive environment, you need the information on the other organizations and to be able to then take measures, take decisions. And this is what the management accounting process is doing, and the strategic management accountant is providing to enable the organization to maintain and retain its position compared to the other organizations. Help evaluate its competitive position relative to rest of industry, as we have said, collecting data on costs and prices, sales volumes, and resource availability for main competitors. That's the kind of information, therefore, that is needed by management to be able to assess the position and to take the decisions on a longer term basis. What are the costs and what are the prices of competition? You have to compete with them. So therefore, your own costs must be similar and equally efficient. Then you can compete in the pricing. The pricing, of course, as we've seen earlier in the course, the cost of the product is going to have a significant effect on the price. So costs and prices of competition is something that management would like to be aware of, and they need that information on a regular basis. The volume of sale and the share of market. The market share means that who are the major competitors, who are the major suppliers within the market, and what is their share. So if you have a total sales in the market of 100, and that's, you can take that, add as many zeros as you like, 100,000, 100 million, and so forth. An organization that is contributing, let's say, 40 out of the 100 has a 40% market share. An organization that is contributing 20 has a 20% market share. So the organization needs to know what is its market share within its industry, and what is the role, and therefore it can take decisions and act according to what its position is within the market. So the information about costs and prices and market share and volumes, resource availability, cash availability, all this information helps you to anticipate what will be the effect of your decisions and what the others are likely to do, and therefore what will be your position after you take those decisions. So the decisions have to be taken keeping in mind an anticipation of how the competition is going to react. Information available from public source, i.e. annual reports, press, official institutions, and informal sources. The informal sources will include sales personnel, consultants, industry specialists. In order to gather the external information, the management accounting team will then need to acquire this information. And there are sources, some of them are relatively easier to obtain. They are public information, such as the annual reports. The annual reports of an organization gives a fair amount of detail about the operating and the operation and the capacity and the profitability and all that about an organization. So one source which should be readily available is the annual report of competition. Very often the press gives detail of prospective projects about organizations, their prospective investment plans, and so forth. So the press is also a very good, easily obtained source of information. If there is a particular trade and there is a trade association, sometimes there are trade journals related to the particular trade, and other economic journals. They provide information on the various companies, and you can obtain information relating to your own industry and to your competition. What we have said as informal source is equally an important source. And the informal sources are the person-to-person contact between your sales team or other team, how they can obtain some information. The other informal sources, we said, are industry specialists and consultants, and they have, because of their experience in the industry and experience with other companies, they have information which can be obtained and which is useful. So obtaining external information is very much a part of this strategic management accounting. You need to have the information of your competitors, and then you need to position yourself and also to sustain that position. Strategic positioning. A firm has a choice of 3 generic strategies in order to achieve sustainable competitive advantage: cost leadership, product differentiation, focus. We are going to consider strategic positioning of the organization, strategic positioning of the company. In thinking of strategy, what are the what we call 3 generic strategic positioning? Generic means common, well-known, well-used. And we are going to look at three different types of positioning. One, we said, is going to be cost leadership. Cost leadership implies that you are going to be the leader in having low cost. So you are able to deal with your competitors and take advantage by having the lowest cost. So lowest cost producer is the cost leadership. That is one strategy to take. The organization, when it's trying to enter into a market and make its own position and make its own place, it has to consider what strategy to follow. One strategy to follow is a low cost producer, and a lowest cost producer will give it a good position in the market. So that's the strategy of cost leadership. Another strategy is what we call product differentiation. In this, the producer is going to differentiate its product, not necessarily be the lowest cost producer and therefore the lowest price. It will have a higher price, but it will be differentiated by having a reputation for reliability, for quality, longer lasting, less defects, more functionalities, things like that. So that's the second positioning, strategic positioning, and we said this is product differentiation. Differentiation of the product on the basis of reliability and longer lasting and no defects and so forth. And the third usual and generic strategy is the focus strategy. The focus strategy implies that the organization is going to focus on a particular segment of the market, a particular group of customers who have some different and special needs, and therefore they are going to provide for that special focus group. And there's going to be, so this involves specialization, it involves products aimed at a particular type of customers. Thinking of examples for cost leadership, if you think that a product such as milk has a market price, let's say, of rupees 50 per liter. Normal, commonly available milk, let's say, is 50 rupees per liter. If you have a supplier who can then price the liter of milk at 40 rupees or even 35 rupees, then this is going to be cost leadership. And this will be an example where they are aiming to attract customers and consumers on the basis of low cost and therefore low price. And there have to be certain reasons and certain factors behind how a supplier can get to this cost leadership position. And we'll just look at that in a minute. So one example would be where prices of either milk or beverages or ice cream, things like that, if you can provide a price which is significantly below the market price, the prevailing market price, then you take leadership in that way. Water is being purchased, large cans of water, let's say if they cost 90 rupees per the large can, if in comes a supplier that can introduce that at 60 rupees or even less, then this is a big cost advantage. This is a big price advantage to the consumer. And there will be a definite shift in the consumers when somebody can provide this kind of cost leadership and provide this kind of cost reduction to the consumers. So that's how we look at cost leadership. Looking at product differentiation, we can compare the Chinese products to the Japanese products. The Japanese products are basically aimed at product differentiation. They are aimed at quality, reliability, functionality, no defect, longer lasting. Therefore, there is a difference between the product that is coming out of the Japanese companies. And we can compare that to the Chinese companies. And the Chinese companies are focusing on low cost. So the Chinese products are going to be easily available. They are going to be lower in cost, but they won't have the same reliability as the Japanese products. So this is what we are referring to when we think of product differentiation. You differentiate your products, and of course the electronics market is very a good example of this, that you can have lower cost products within the electronic market, and a lot of them will be Chinese made products, and those will be basically low cost. Whereas usually the Japanese products are going to be more expensive, more costly, but they will be regarded as having greater reliability and better quality and lasting longer, better after sales service and things like that. So this is product differentiation. And lastly, we talked about the third item we talked about is the focus group, where the supplier is focusing on a particular category of a customer. One example in this would be the luxury cars. The luxury cars, the big luxury cars are usually purchased and used by a small group of individuals, and those who can afford them. So the luxury cars are aiming at those individuals who are able to afford an expensive and a luxurious car. Another example would be a sports motorbike. Now, sports motorbikes will only be used by individuals, those customers who are fond of this type of a product, sports motorbike. We can see it on our streets, and we have the youngsters late in the evenings. They want to race on their motorbikes. They want to ride them fast and hard. The supplier of a sports motorbike is targeting that particular group of customers who are fond of and who will be keen to purchase and ride sports type of motorbikes. So that is like a focus group. So here we have the three different categories: the cost leadership, the product differentiation, and the focus category. Cost leadership compete on the basis of lower selling price. Advantage may be due to economies of scale, access to favorable raw materials, superior technology. For the cost leadership, there has to be some basis and reason for a supplier to be able to reduce their cost. And we said one example of that would be economies of scale. What are economies of scale? Economies of scale is that they have placed large quantities of orders, and therefore they have been able to reduce their cost because of the large quantities in which they buy. So bulk buying, large quantity buying, higher discounts, that gives them an advantage, and that can be a reason for cost leadership, low cost. Another factor we said is access to some raw materials. If you can access some raw materials which are not easily available, then you get into a position where your cost, because of that access, is lower than that of others. This could relate to some specialized materials. This could relate to things like oil. If you have access to oil, others don't, then you are able to produce oil products which others can't, or at least at the price at which you have, because if you have the, let's say, the opportunity of drilling wells, and you have the opportunity of rights on certain oils or minerals and things like that, and that kind of raw material, then the products that you will produce will be at a price which others probably cannot match. So that would be the case of having access to raw materials, and superior technology can also be a basis for you to provide the lower cost. If you have that kind of technology or machines or access to that kind of research which is not easily available, then your product can be priced probably below the others. So this is the case of cost leadership. You can have raw materials, bulk discounts, economies of scale, and you can have technology. Other reasons, of course, can also exist. Differentiation, superior and unique products. For example, dependability of product, after-sales service, wide availability. This is the basis of differentiation. Superior products, widely available. Superior products, why? Because of their dependability, because of their reliability, longer lasting, widely available. These are the various other bases on which you can take market leadership, strategic positioning based on product differentiation. Focus on a narrow segment of the market that has special needs. So wherever you are going to focus on a small group of customers with special needs, specialization, you are more or less getting yourself into a position where not everybody will come. Not everybody will enter, and not everybody will try to compete in these areas of specialized focus groups. So these are the three various strategic positionings organizations can adopt in entering the market and making their presence and products introduced into the market. Accounting in relation to strategic positioning. There will be more emphasis on particular accounting techniques depending on the strategic position adopted. Accounting techniques will play a role depending on the strategic position that the organization has adopted. For example, if you take the position of cost leadership, then your costing information becomes that much more important. It has to be accurate, it has to provide you the information, and it has to comply with the cost standards. So if you are not going to meet cost standards and there is wastage and there is other kind of unnecessary cost creeping in, you will not be able to retain the cost leadership. So your costing system, management accounting system, will have to be based on the strategy that you adopt. For cost leadership, it will be based on providing minute detail, giving accurate and timely information where standards are not being met, and focusing on meeting the cost standards. So accounting is going to play the role. This needs to be understood by a lot of business people and business owners, that the accounting is going to play a role in the decision making. It is going to provide you the information to correct your positioning. So the more effective and timely and these days live information available on the business operations, it will enable the organization to position and to fall into the strategy and be able to achieve the desired objectives. Tight cost controls are more appropriate where cost leadership is followed. Manufacturing cost standards are likely to be less important for a firm following product differentiation strategy. Where a product differentiation strategy is being followed, what should the management accounting be doing? What kind of focus will there be? In this case, the focus will not be on at all times meeting the cost standards and making sure that they are not exceeded. There will be, but the primary focus will be on meeting the objective of providing products that are going to have the distinctive features which they are designed for. So they are going to have their reliability, their different features, they are going to have their longer lasting, and so this product differentiation. Hence, the management accounting will be focusing on providing information, but that will not have the same kind of focus in trying to reduce costs and minimize costs. Why? Because the organization is prepared to position itself on the dependability of the product and therefore charge a price accordingly. So when you are able to charge a price accordingly, then the cost of making improvements will not be something that will deter, or decisions will be taken to try to immediately reduce costs. So the positioning of the organization within the market and its strategy, that is going to affect the management accounting system that they will adopt and the management accounting focus. Target costing and strategic management accounting. Target costing falls within the domain of strategic management accounting. We have discussed target costing earlier, and now we are going to see how target costing falls within the domain of strategic management accounting. That one of the things that strategic management accounting will lead to is something like target costing. If you remember, target costing, we said, was first of all setting a target selling price and deducting from the selling price a target profit margin, and therefore arriving at a target cost which should be achieved. And then the teams getting together and making sure that the actual cost is going to be within the target cost. So why is this target costing regarded as strategic management accounting? Well, basically, here again, the focus is on the markets. First of all, the price has to be prevailing market price. Secondly, the margins have to be acceptable in the market, and therefore that will lead to a price. So this entire process is market driven, and when it's market driven, then you have to make strategies and you have to make plans and strategies that will be competitive in the market, and that gives you a strategic thinking. The steps that need to be taken have to be based on the strategy to be followed to meet the targets. So that's how target costing becomes, in a way, a part of strategic management accounting. Justification for this is the external focus and the market-driven approach to product pricing and cost management. The aim is to achieve target cost, which involves examining cost reduction opportunities throughout the entire value chain. When the aim is to try to establish cost reduction opportunities throughout the entire value chain, then we are looking at the organization's operations and activities in its entirety. And we are looking at cost reductions, and we're looking at significant changes. So when we look at significant changes in trying to reach the target costing, then we are in fact looking at a strategic perspective of the organization. We have set the target. We have set the target by looking at market factors, by taking an estimated selling price less an estimated profit margin. The profit margin should also be a realistic and competitive margin. If we are going to take an unrealistic profit margin and unrealistically try to show a low target cost, it will be hard to achieve. The team can get together, they can work out various ways and things, but remember, the essential part is not to compromise the value being provided by the product, not to compromise the value to the customer. So the value to the customer must be retained, and that's where we are saying we are taking a strategic perspective. We are looking at the entire chain. We are looking at cost reduction methods which are significant and impact, but they are market driven and aimed at meeting competition and also, of course, beating competition. So this is what makes it, in a way, that target costing can be thought of as strategic management accounting. Now, the next topic that we are going to discuss is the balanced scorecard. While we are talking about strategy, and while we are talking about a strategy that affects the organization and implementing a strategy within the organization that involves both financial and non-financial aspects, and it covers all the operations and activities of an organization, then we are going to see how this is achieved by the balanced scorecard. Traditionally, the way in which performance was measured was by looking at profitability, looking at profit analysis, profit reports, sales volumes, margins, things like that. Nowadays, because there is so much focus on trying to provide customer value, re-engineer the products, re-engineer the business processes, find cost reduction opportunities, then a strategy has to be evolved that involves all these other factors. It's no longer a case of just examining performance by looking at financial results. The financial results have to be kept in focus, but the entire strategy of making improvements to processes and value added, that has to be borne in mind, and the strategy that has been evolved to achieve that, there has to be a way of implementing that within the organization. So let's look at what the balanced scorecard is. The balanced scorecard. Attention is being given to encourage behavior that is consistent with organization's strategy. Development of an integrated framework of performance measurement that can be used to clarify, communicate, and manage strategy implementation. So now the focus is on a framework that is going to integrate the performance measurement. So the framework means the entire setup and entire way in which management accounting will work. You have the performance measurement, and when we say that has to be integrated, that means that both things have to be looked at together. One, the financial performance. Secondly, the implementation of strategy. So this entire process of strategy being clarified and being communicated down the line to the various levels of staff so that they understand the strategy, and then to ensure that is implemented. So performance measurement is looking at all these aspects, whether strategy has been implemented and whether it has been understood and clarified, and then compare the financial performance accordingly. So when we look at all these things, then we are looking at a larger performance measure, as you can say. And that strategy of looking at many other factors, that is what is reflected in the balanced scorecard. The approach will attempt to integrate both financial and non-financial measures and incorporate performance measurement within the strategic management process. So now we are going to look at both financial and non-financial measures. Traditionally, as I said, we were looking at financial measures, we were looking at profits, sales volumes, profit analysis, market shares, profit margins. Now we are going to look at the non-financial aspects. Non-financial aspects will include the setup time, the time it takes for the machines to set up. The non-financial will include this throughput cycle time. From start to finish, how long does it take for the product, for us to complete the entire production cycle? So these are going to be the non-financial aspects that are now going to be examined by looking at how the product is providing value to the customer. So all these non-financial aspects are now going to come in, and we are going to have a performance measure which is going to examine both these aspects and incorporate the strategy implementation as well as the performance measurement. Product quality, delivery, reliability, after-sales service, and customer satisfaction have become key competitive variables. We have said that before. None of these were given much importance measured by traditional management accounting performance measurement systems. The need to integrate financial and non-financial measures of performance and identify key performance indicators that link to strategy led to the emergence of the balanced scorecard. Because strategy had to be evolved, because there was great emphasis on reducing cost, there was great emphasis on looking at the entire process, the entire value chain, and finding opportunities. Because there was a need to satisfy customers and ensure product quality is good, and there is the introduction of the just-in-time systems, which is expected to reduce costs. So all these other factors that are coming in now into management, the importance therefore became that management has to first of all themselves evolve a strategy for this kind of performance, this low-cost performance. When it evolves its own strategy, then that strategy has to be clarified and communicated down the line to the various different levels. After that, it has to be monitored and it has to be ensured that implementation occurs. So there has to be now a system that is going to measure all this aspect and not just the financial result. And the balanced scorecard results in looking at and seeing how all these aspects of strategy are being examined, and it monitors them and reports on their performance. So this is an integrated performance management approach. That's all for this session. Thank you very much.